This meeting of Norwood City Council is hereby called to order. Please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, is the body we congregate in these council chambers. We pray for thy divine guidance, that we may do all things well, according to thy holy will. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall. Here. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Present.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Here.
Mr. Sanker.
Here.
Mr. Breeden.
Here.
All members are present. We have one request to amend the agenda, and that is to remove the minutes from the council meeting of August 13th. They are not quite in final form yet, so need a motion to remove those from the agenda. Ms. Stevenson, seconded by Mrs. Hanrahan. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Oh, there was a question.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm if that was Mrs. Hanrahan's second.
I'm sorry. I thought you had your hand up. You're good, yes?
I'm good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We have no request to address council on agenda items, standing committee reports, third or second reading of resolutions or ordinances. It is my pleasure to have the introductory readings of ordinances, and the first is a resolution honoring United States Army veteran Jerome H. Rutgers for his service to AHE Allied cause in the World War II on the occasion of his award of the French Legion of Honor by the Republic of France. If you would like to come forward, we call him Red, so if you want to come up here, Jerry and Dee, you can come up. No? Okay. So we'll have council make motions to have the resolution. We just want you to stay here for just a minute, and then you can comment if you want. What is your pleasure? Mr. Sanker.
Madam President, I recommend we have the first reading in its entirety and the second and third reading following.
Seconded by Mr. Breeden. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries.
Resolution honoring United States Army veteran Jerome H. Rutgers for his service to the Allied cause in World War II on the occasion of his award of the French Legion of Honor by the Republic of France. Whereas longtime Norwood resident Jerome H. Rutgers answered the call to military service in World War II by serving honorably and with distinction as a squad leader and platoon guide in the United States Army, 263rd Regiment, Company A, 66th Infantry Division in the European Theater of Operations. And whereas Jerome H. Rutgers' military service, including combat on January 12, 1945, near the port of Saint-Nazaire in western France, during which Mr. Rutgers was injured, captured by enemy forces, and held prisoner until May 12, 1945, helped free many people from the totalitarian regime, and has brought credit to himself, his family, and his nation, including our community. And whereas, after having been awarded the Purple Heart, the Prisoner of War Medal, the Bronze Star, the American Theater Ribbon, the European African Middle Eastern Theater Ribbon with 1 Bronze Star, the Good Conduct Ribbon, the World War II Victory Medal, and the Expert Infantryman Badge, the government of the Republic of France, an ally of the United States of America since our war for independence, has chosen to bestow its highest distinction that can be conferred on a French or foreign citizen, the French Legion of Honor, on Jerome H. Rutgers, on this, the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings and the Battle of Normandy in northern France. And whereas the Consul General of France, Guillaume Lacroix, presented the French Legion of Honor Medal to Jerome H. Rutgers at a ceremony at the Norwood High School Mini Auditorium on July 9, 2019, attended by many of Mr. Rutgers' family members, friends, and fellow Norwood citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Norwood, State of Ohio, that this council expresses its respect for and admiration of the bravery of Norwood citizen Jerome H. Rectors for his dedication to the causes of freedom and peace, and the appreciation of this council for Mr. Rector's military service to God and country. Resolution honoring United States Army veteran Jerome H. Rectors for his service to the Allied cause in World War II on the occasion of his award of the French Legion of Honor by the Republic of France. Resolution honoring United States Army veteran Jerome H. Rectors for his service to the Allied cause in World War II on the occasion of his award of the French Legion of Honor by the Republic of France.
Mr. Sanker.
I recommend that the resolution be passed.
Excuse me. Seconded by Mr. Braden. Excuse me. Are there any comments? Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President, I would like to congratulate Mr. Rectors again for this award and honor. Back in July, when this was presented to him, this award is the highest award that can be granted by France, and has to be issued and authorized by France's president. And attending at the ceremony was actually a representative from France to present this Medal of Honor. So it's one of the highest honors that you could ever receive for military service from the country of France. So congratulations, and thanks for your service. It's great.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Madam President. Sir, what an honor it is for you to be here today. Thank you for your service, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Mrs. Hanahan.
Thank you, Madam President. Congratulations, and thank you for your service. And I just want to say it's an honor to know you, Mr. Redkers.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanahan. Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you. I'll just echo my colleagues here. Norwood has a very proud history of so many people serving, and I just want to thank you for stepping up and doing that. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Personally, after the war, he came back and bought a house and got married. And how many kids did you have?
7 children.
7 children. Started his own business. Still lives in Norwood.
12 grandchildren.
12, how many?
18. We just had another one Sunday.
Wow. 12 grandchildren and 18 great-grandchildren. Look what you started.
What a
Well, I had the pleasure of being at the ceremony too, but we just wanted to make sure that you knew how much our government, France expressed to you their appreciation, but we wanted to make sure that our government expressed their appreciation to you. So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for what you did. I know you're a very humble man and you didn't want to come, but that's okay. We wanted you here anyway. So.
I appreciate everything. Little did I know that on March the 20th, 1943, when I left here in the bus, a little boy right out of high school, and then I probably wasn't 30 miles out of Norwood in my whole life, and got to set the world free.
Wow. Well, hold on, we're not finished yet. Call the roll, please. Motion on the floor is to pass the resolution. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonsall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. And I do have a copy of this for you, friend, which you can add to your many honors. Thank you very much. Thank you.
See ya.
I don't know what you do for me.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, we will move on to resolutions requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for management of the City of Norwood's water system for 6 months. Before you act on that, I told you that I would talked to the mayor about the water purveyor, and I did follow up with him. The mayor said that he is not inclined to switch horses in the middle of the road. So he does not want to ask Greater Cincinnati Waterworks or get someone else to take over, even in the short term. His opinion was that Mr. Gears had done a lot of the hard work already, and that we should wait for the report from the EPA. It's one thing I wanted to report to you. At the last meeting, I told you about some of the tests that were done, and I made some mistakes, and I want to make sure that I correct those. I said that the Norwood Health Department collects 15 bacteria samples every month, and that's actually 20. Mr. Marshall and I had a conversation, and he did let me know that there are 20 that are done. Also, I said that the samples were taken to the Cincinnati Health Department lab. Since I left as health commissioner, the Cincinnati Health Department has closed their lab, and so the laboratory services for water are done directly at Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. So the samples that are taken go directly to Cincinnati Waterworks laboratory for testing. And there's actually one extra test that is done within Norwood that I totally forgot about. It's a TTHM and HAA5. Everybody knows what that is, right? They're just byproducts of chlorination. So those are tests that are done in addition by Norwood. So nothing negative to report, just more positive things that the health department does. But no good deed goes unpunished, so I wanted to make sure we got the correct information on the record. So that is all I have to say about that. We do have 3 requests to address council on water, so I will have those folks come up prior to consideration of the resolution. Linda Sodaro, if you'll give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council.
I'm Linda Sodaro. I live at 2516 Sheridan Drive in Norwood. I want to thank you, Madam President, and members of council for having us here and listening to the concerns of citizens. I appreciate that. Water is a human issue that should not be political, but here we are. These resolutions are a tentative first step in solving the problems in our system. I urge you to vote yes on both resolutions to demonstrate your understanding of the gravity of the situation. I also ask that you consider putting them on a fast track, as there has already been too much delay. This could help restore stakeholders' confidence in the system. And I was really calm about this because I have a certain degree of confidence that you all are going to do the right thing tonight. But at 6:45, I was on the phone with someone who lives across the street from the tanks. And I have to emphasize the importance of communication with the citizens, because people don't know what's going on. Someone who lives right across from the tanks should have been given information about the cleanup, because those FOIA documents say that the cleanup is a toxic process that requires containment of the tanks as well as protective gear for the workers. So people who live around those tanks need to know what's going on. They deserve to know what's going on. Please investigate this. The people that you represent deserve to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Kate Hand. Again, if you'll give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
All right. Hi, my name's Kate Hand. I'm from 2269 Adams Avenue. Thank you very much for letting me address you today. Mr. Sanker, I'm going to address you specifically today because you represent my ward, and I voted for you last time. And you are here representing my family and me and my neighbors. So I'm making a plea for your vote specifically. I'll start by saying that I am not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not taken to believing everything I read online. I have read every bit of paperwork that I can possibly soak up on this issue, and I understand that our water is safe. I'm not even boiling it. But the giant stacks of clean water checks that the mayor brought to the last council meeting that I was at don't mean a thing to me. When we're operating currently on a faulty system, I think showing a giant stack of papers of how clean all of our past water checks have been with a faulty system is like saying, yes, this airplane that we're in, it needs maintenance, but it's fine because we're still in the air. Clear skies ahead. It's not okay. I believe that our water and our sewer systems are in danger of failure and that they need to be expertly addressed. And I emphasize expertly. I believe in the good of our government and in the inherent good of people to do what is good for themselves and their families and their neighbors. And in this case, I think that despite what may have been very good intentions, the administration has been in over its head for a really long time, and it's time to seek help. So not just for the next 6 months, although I guess if that's all I can take, well, we can take, we'll get it, right? But I don't think we should just dump this problem on the next administration. I think that this is bigger than that. I think that we seek long-term assistance. So yes, mistakes were made. Luckily, those haven't been grave mistakes yet, right? Like there's still time to turn this around. So please take this opportunity to right those wrongs and seek expert management from the city of Cincinnati. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Amy Wolfenbarger. Again, if you'll give it your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council.
Amy Wolfenbarger, 5406 Carthage Avenue. I too am here tonight asking council to vote yes on the water resolutions. I would like to see it longer than 6 months as well, but I'm pretty confident in council's ability and hopefully the newly elected folks to continue with the contract in 6 months if needed. So again, I support both of the resolutions. I don't feel that due to the inactivity that has occurred since the reports came out in 2014, I don't trust the current administration's judgment, and I don't trust them to move forward in a productive manner. So I especially support the resolution to have Cincinnati bring in a water guy for us temporarily. I would also like to thank Councilwoman Hanrahan for her comments in the special meeting last week in regards to Ohio EPA's remarks. I know that took a lot of strength and courage, and I personally am grateful for that. So thank you, and thanks to y'all for hearing me again tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfenbarger. We'll move on to consideration of the resolution. Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. I would move that we have all 3 readings of the resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Mr. Thompson?
This first resolution is for a resolution requesting proposal from Greater Cincinnati Water Works for management of the city and village water system for 6 months. I know that we're doing this against a backdrop of issues that we're having with our water system currently, but I think that we can look at this particular resolution even from a practical matter. In 4 months, one way or another, we're not going to have an operator of record for our water system because the current administration will be up, and I doubt very seriously if Mr. Gears is going to continue on in that role. So I think that it's just good forward thinking and business for us as a council to pass this resolution seeking to, whether the administration wants it or not, to help provide a transition of this role and the duties associated with this role, not only for the current problems that we're experiencing, but just for the time that's going to happen from January forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mrs. Hanrahan?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Thompson stole my whole speech. I want to say the same thing. In 4 months, Mr. Gears might not be here. We don't want to wait until December and decide we need to start looking for somebody. What this resolution does, we're not signing a contract, we're not doing anything, we're just getting information. And I think that's really important. I think that's our job, to prepare for the future. And we don't want to leave the city, stranded with nobody come January, or at least not having some options. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanahan. Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to echo what both my colleagues just said. This is way bigger than any water tower issue, and this is not a reaction just to that. While there is frustrations there, the concerns are about the overall system and just ensuring that we're doing everything we can to make sure the system is operating correctly. I think there's a lot of efficiencies that would be gained by having somebody that full-time works as a professional that knows exactly what's going on, that can work on the system, instruct our employees so that we can target the places where there could be water leaks. Potentially there could be some good ideas for how to improve some retail billing services that we're currently doing. I think that there's just so many benefits to bringing this on, including having somebody that carries over into the next mayoral term to help the next mayor be a better mayor by having more advanced knowledge of the water system than they would have otherwise. So with that, I would, and regarding the three readings, I mean, we had 5 weeks in between when this stuff first came out, or 4.5 weeks until we had our next regular council meeting. We've had a special meeting since then, and now we are here today. I've heard some people have said in the past, oh, we just need to be patient, we need to wait for this, wait for that. This resolution is essentially just asking for information. It's just letting us know what that might look like. And we know that there's a possibility that Greater Cincinnati Water Works would be willing to do this because we have seen it in an email from Mayor Cranley to the mayor. He offered it back in mid-July. So again, this is just asking for information. There's nothing that we're committing the city to. We just need to, I think it would be good for all of us to understand what that could look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. I did speak to, another thing the mayor told me was that there will be a sit-down meeting sometime soon with Greater Cincinnati Water Works, Cincinnati, Norwood, all the parties, and EPA, everybody involved. I'm not sure when that is, but there will be a sit-down meeting to discuss what has transpired in the future. Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President. In regards to the way it reads, yes, we're asking for a proposal from the city of Cincinnati for a water purveyor. But from the tone of everyone's comments, once we get the proposal, it's a matter of time before we just hire somebody to take this over. I mean, that's everybody said we need to put somebody in place. So basically, we're getting a proposal to replace the individual that's there now. And I do think long term we do need to have somebody there. However, we're halfway down the river with this process, working with Cincinnati and the EPA. And to try to turn the ship around now and go in another direction with different personnel, I don't think it's the time to actually do that. I believe we should get through this process, and as you stated, trying to get the finality with Cincinnati and the EPA, and I think once we hear that finality of what needs to be done, if anything, what needs to be changed, if anything, then I think at that point in time, you look to for someone else potentially. I don't know that we need to replace somebody right now just for the sake of replacing somebody. And that seems to be the underlying feeling I get from the last meeting and even tonight. It's a matter of we want to replace our water guy with another water person, no matter what. And we're going to do it no matter what. And I believe that that's what the consensus was. The tone of the last meeting, when these things were coming up, was a tone of, we're going to do this almost as we got this power. We're going to do this, and it's almost like we'll get even with you type attitude. And I get that feeling, as well as other people who saw what was going on. I got that same feeling. We're going to do this no matter what because we can, and we're going to get even with you. Why or why not, I don't know. But I do believe long term, we are going to need to make a change there. But the change in midstream, while we're working with Cincinnati already and with the EPA already, I don't think we need to bring in someone else at this time to kind of change in midstream. So that's just my opinion. Down the road, we probably definitely are going to need to do something. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Mr. Thompson.
I'd like to respond to what Mr. Sanker said. I understand where you're coming from. I think the idea that we want to do this for the sake of replacing someone is to be very short-sighted, because it's not like we're doing this in a vacuum. We've got a whole lot of reasons that the person currently in charge of what's going on has apparently dropped the ball. I understand wanting to see a final report. We all want to see that final report. We're going to see that final report. I don't see a reason to put this off, as this is just seeking information to help us make decisions once that final report comes out. Also, I take certain amount of responsibility for the tone of the last couple of meetings. Just because I'm passionate about this issue, and some of that passion, or maybe a lot of that passion, came out in my discussion. But for me, this is not about exercising power. It's not about getting even. It's just about getting someone with expertise in this position to help us handle this problem. And I don't think we've got that. And to say that we would be changing midstream, the stream has been going for a long time. We're nowhere near the middle of it. And I don't think we're close to the end either. So I appreciate where you're coming from, and I understand what you're saying. And I just think that this is the right time to get this process going. It's the beginning of a process. It's not the end of a process. It's the beginning of a process, and so that's why I believe that we should pass this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Are there any other comments? Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. So I too want to respond. It was made that, the comment was made that, that we're going to have to do something no matter what, that we're going to have to bring somebody else in at some point. So I guess I'm confused at when that point would be, because right now we have a generous offer, and let's be clear, it's a very generous offer, and we don't even know what the offer looks like because we haven't seen it, but the offer to potentially even loan a senior employee that knows a lot about how waterworks systems should operate, and potentially to loan that person to us for a period of time, likely at a rate that's much lower than what we could pay an expert consultant to come in and do that same job. I would say that it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for all of us to learn about the system, to learn about how things should operate. It's an opportunity for the water employees here in Norwood to further perfect their craft, and it's an opportunity for us to potentially ensure that we're using the best of processes when it comes to billing. It's just an overall opportunity, and and frankly an investment, I think, into our city all around. It's not about replacing. It's not about replacing anybody. It's not about nobody's going to lose their job over this. Even if the proposal was great and everybody wanted to move forward, if anything, I would think it would be celebrated, because it actually takes. Joe has always complained that he has got so much going on. He has so many things to do. He's doing union contracts. He's running public works. He's doing everything else. To take just one, one thing off of him, I would think it would be celebrated. So anyways, it's not but I do want to emphasize that this likely should have been done years ago. It's not something that I think that it was all in the forefront of our eyes years ago, and maybe it should have been, but we're here now. We have a much better understanding with all of this that's going on and understanding of how far behind we are. And I think it would be very good for the city to bring somebody in so that we can learn exactly what needs to happen so that we can actually operate effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President. I believe most of the comments that were just made are basically made on speculation, not on facts. And most of the suggestions that were made stating that what this person could potentially do actually would pertain more to the next resolution than this one here, because that takes into consideration the overall system. This person here would be an overseer, but when it comes to the overall system, that would be something more over than what this individual would be capable of doing. So I believe most of that is based on speculation.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Any other comments? Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if you have the answers, Madam President, or if other members of council might have them. In the second paragraph of the resolution, it says, whereas the City of Norwood's administration, including its licensed water purveyor in cooperation with OEPA, has requested recommendations from Dixon Engineering. It's a professional organization. I'm just trying to make sure I'm tracking. Is this a request that is synonymous with the recommendation we received back on August 20th to get an assessment and a report, or is this referencing what was already documented and made known at the special meeting when there was reference to the documents collected from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks?
I know that the city has been using Dixon Engineering to conduct all of the repairs and all that, so I didn't write the resolution. I'm not sure what the intent of that is. I can assure you that Dixon Engineering has been the firm that has been making the repairs.
I know we've been contracting with Dixon, so thank you for that confirmation. I'm realizing that what's been recommended to us from the City of Cincinnati, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, is that we would hire an engineering firm, presumably Dixon, to provide an assessment report on system conditions with some specific language on what is needed. And I'm not certain if this language is referencing that or if this is referencing something else. Anybody got any insight on that?
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, can you answer that, or however the request was made, or whatever? Can you help us?
I think that particular whereas clause is to reflect the fact that there is currently work being done, there are recommendations that currently exist. My sense is that council is interested in moving beyond what already is in place. Although this resolution may be more focused on essentially bringing a new water purveyor to oversee whatever needs to be done for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I'm not sure I understood the question.
Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. So I think it helps with the context. What was puzzling to me as I read through this was I don't know that this resolution leads to more clarity around what's needed. I know that it's a request for a proposal, but my understanding is we would need a report from an engineering firm first to know what we need to be proposed based on the letter we received on August 20th and the last set of discussions. So that was one question I had in terms of where's the thought around what that report would entail. Another question for you, Madam President. I believe in our last discussion at the special meeting, we discussed having a copy of the report after all of the work is complete. And I just wanted to confirm, is that a request that was made to the administration that it be shared with the member of councils?
I think that that's going to be a public record, so I don't know when that report is due. My suspicion is in the not too distant future. I know the smaller tank has been repaired and refilled, and they're draining the second larger tank now. My assumption is that once that is completed, then that's when that report will come out and the meeting will take place to go over that report. That's a matter of public record.
Thank you. I realize that. I just didn't know if it had already been requested that it be shared with us.
I'm certain if that has not been done, I will reiterate that.
Would you please, at this point, other than the mayor's administrative report, I don't know that we've received direct communication from the administration, so I would appreciate if you could reiterate that.
I will follow up. No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Mr. Thompson?
Ms. Stevenson, if you could clarify your question, you said you were unsure of what you were requesting at this proposal.
I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. You were asking what this particular resolution was requesting?
Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Thompson, the statement that the administration has requested recommendations from Dixon Engineering, that I'm not clear. Is that a request of recommendations that is similar to the action step that was recommended we take? So I'm not certain if this request is actually going to, if the proposal that we would get would address the items that the engineering firm is recommending.
Mr. Thompson?
I don't believe that that's what this request is for. This request, if you go to the section 1, is clearly council hereby requests the City of Norwood's administration request a proposal of the city and its Greater Cincinnati Water Works to provide water system management to the services, water system management services to the City of Norwood. I imagine that would be that and all that entails. I think the whereases are just trying to cover off on where we are currently. We've been working with the EPA. We've been working with Dixon Engineering. We've been working with Cincinnati Water Works. This and the headline resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Water Works for management of the City of Norwood's water systems for 6 months. I think that's fairly clear.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Thompson, where that becomes unclear to me is the action steps that we were given on August 20th. Name a partnership with potential water systems that can assist as one of several steps. And as I read this letter without directly communicating with the City of Cincinnati, I assume that that proposal, conversation, including outlining financing, costs for long-term involvement, and operation of the Norwood Public Water System would follow the assessment and report and would correspond, is the language here, with OEPA to identify the requirements and priorities for the system. So while I understand this as a request for a proposal, I wasn't clear that this actually would get us a proposal that addresses those other things.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Mr. Bonsall?
I'd like to
I'm sorry,
respond
Mr. Thompson?
I think it's important also to realize that that was just a suggestion from Cincinnati, and we're not necessarily having to follow step by step what they have suggested. So while I appreciate that you want to make sure that we cover off on those things, I believe this is more specifically tied to an operator of record for our systems. I think actually the next proposal, when we talk about a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Water Works for long-term management of the City of Norwood's water system, that to me feels like a bit more broad. But this is really, I think it's spelled out pretty clearly in here what we're asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. So, yes, I've got the letter pulled up on my phone here from Patrick Duhaney. Essentially, there's action steps that they would recommend, and they're in I guess they're in some order. I don't know why they're in the order they are. But I do agree with Ms. Stevenson that we should ensure that all action steps are addressed. Where I guess that kind of differs, I don't think that we have to go to action step 1 and make sure it's completely done before we can go to action step 2, and make sure that's completely done before we can go to action step 3. I think we can work on multiple action steps at the same time. And this proposal right here, or this resolution right here, is literally the first step, essentially, to even accomplishing action step 5, which is consider a new temporary operator of record that can focus solely on the water system and help develop long-term plans for the future. So really because there's going to be a delay in this whole process in getting the proposals from Greater Cincinnati Water Works, there's no reason for us to delay when it's an action step. And I agree, I do appreciate that you're being diligent with ensuring that all the action steps are followed. So I would encourage a yes vote on this so that we can work on trying to accomplish action step number 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ponsell. Mrs. Hanrahan?
Thank you, Madam President. Pretty much going to echo what they've said.
Can you speak up into your
I'm
microphone?
sorry. This is just a proposal. We all know how slow government works. I'm really concerned if we don't get started on the project or on the process right now of at least looking at something, getting something in writing, knowing what they can offer. It could be months before this could even come to fruition. So I really think that this is important to get started on right now.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanrahan. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Madam President.
Sorry, the rules say I have to.
Thank get you. Thank you. So there's been a lot of argument back and forth here, not argument, but discussion about for and against. And I don't have any issues with looking for prices. I think that's what we should be doing as responsible fiscal government. So I have a few questions on, I do hear that we have someone in the water department that had their purveyor's license, let it run out. I hear that they're looking to renew that license so that we are not left without a purveyor in Norwood. I'm curious on what other credentials we're looking for in a water purveyor. Mr. Thompson just alluded that we were currently working with the EPA and the CWW and Dixon Engineering and others to address the issues that we're having. And that seems to be a perfectly reasonable thing to do at this point. So what other credentials are we looking for in a purveyor other than a purveyor's license, other than years and years of experience in dealing with Norwood water lines and drain lines, and I think that's what we have here. So I'm curious on motives for certain things. It is election season, so there's some serious issues that are going on. So those are my mainly, what other credentials are we looking for other than a purveyor's license and experience with our system? Our system is old. We need to update it. I'm not disagreeing with that, and I believe the process has started. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Ms. Stevenson, did you have a comment before? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I will gladly take turns as needed. So something Mr. Braden said caused me to recognize I want to be really clear. I am not opposed to making the improvements we need to our water system. I recognize that resolutions can move slowly, and I'm really glad that we're able to discuss this further today because this is a pretty dense issue. I also want to take a moment and just say thank you to all three of the women who came back and spoke again. I appreciate your urging and I appreciate your attention, sustained attention, because this is a lot to pay attention to. As it relates to the order of the recommendations, I also want to make sure this is really clearly caught. Our level of discussion and our level of education around water system varies. We are a body, and so we definitely need to make some choices collectively. My statement and acknowledgement that we don't have a report around what is needed for our system is really what I perceive to be our body's greatest safeguard against entering into any type of consideration of a proposal where we wouldn't know if it was good or not if we don't actually know where we're starting from. We can all read the law, but clearly interpreting that and applying that, implementing that, maintaining that is really what we're talking about. And so I want to be really cautious that as a body, we're being thoughtful, not just for the sake of being thoughtful, but because we don't want to end up in a space where we as a body are making a choice we're not aware of the ramifications for. And so with that in mind, I actually want to go back to something that was shared at our special meeting, because I did seek the law department's counsel around what does it mean for us to investigate. It's a little bit longer bit of clarity I'd like to share. So if you want to pause and see if there are other comments, Madam President, I am willing to wait.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Are there any other, did you want to discuss that, or?
I'd like to share the insight that I received back. I did forward this on to the Clerk of Council and ask that it be added to the collection of information available for council members to check into as it relates to our water system.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the follow-up. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Bonso.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to respond. We talked about qualifications. So I do appreciate that we've got, I think we have 4 employees down at Public Works that, I think the average is probably around 20 years working on the water system of the 4. Some maybe a little more, some maybe a little less, maybe it's 15, but there's a lot of collective knowledge about how Norwood system operates. I think that though there's not necessarily as much knowledge, at no fault to the employees that are there about how maybe systems either should operate, and this is not, or essentially a political will in the leadership to want to make sure that council is made aware of the things that need to happen and aware of the funding gaps that are there for the system. I mean, I have read, and this is public record on the Ohio EPA website, e-document search, before I get accused of not sharing, but I have read letter after letter of, essentially back and forth between the EPA and the city, and multiple of these letters, it keeps being mentioned there was no money, there was no money, there was no money. How can we fix anything because we have no money? Well, essentially, the financial recovery plan that we've, this body or a body of council has passed once, and this body has amended twice, could have included improvements to our water system if it were known and it were made aware what improvements needed to be made. And so, essentially, I would hope that the state, frankly, wouldn't license a direct report of the current operator of record to be the operator of record, because I don't think that actually solves the issue. I think that the citizens truly need somebody that knows running the system, that knows what a world-class water system should operate like, and help us make incremental improvements so that we can get closer to that goal. I think the citizens of Norwood deserve no less than that.
Thank you, Mr. Bonso. Any other discussion? Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to share what I received back. In one of our last meetings, there was a discussion about ORC 743.08, and there's been a lot of encouragement that council investigate what has been going on. And so I reached out to the law department because it, and I quote, does not appear to require that any committee appointed by a legislative authority, in Norwood's case, the city council, either include or exclude members of the council itself. However, we think it would make more sense, be more prudent for the committee not be council members. So the committee members could basically do a more independent audit, both financial and performance-wise. I'm going to stop there and just really remind members of council, like, my hope, my request is that we would collectively look at the same information. I know we are different people and have different points of view, but when it comes to us collectively deciding how to apply the law, in this case, to our situation, I think it's important that we can trust the resources we're relying on. That was from our law department. I do think there are things that need to be investigated, and I think that specifically Mr. Bonsall has really named some of the ways he's read documents and has sought things, as well as Mrs. Hanrahan. I think that's been helpful to move the discussion along. When it comes to this resolution, though, and why I wanted to read that, I feel like there's still some gaps in what we think we're asking for. Again, I do support getting some more understanding of what our options are. I do think that's a really helpful recommendation from Cincinnati, and I hear a good amount of synergy amongst this body, but I don't know that we know what we're asking for yet in terms of what would allow our system to be improved and by who. So I want to hope that's been made more clear. I did have one more question about the actual language of the ordinance. In section 2, well, actually, excuse me, it's still in section 1. There seems to be an alternative clause here, or in the alternative, that the city of Norwood's administration authorized this council to request this proposal. And I felt like since these are very distinct actions, these needed to be separated out. I wanted to ask the law department for an opinion on that.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam President. The question is, does that need to be expressed in two separate sections of an ordinance or resolution?
Because they're because it's action by two different bodies per se, my question is, does it actually need to be two different things we're voting on or considering?
I'm going to say no, I don't think so. I mean, this is a question of like, we would like the administration to go and get a quote from the city of Cincinnati to be our water purveyor for the next 6 months. And assumed within that is that this outside body or person will then provide recommendations to the city on things that need to be done. If the administration doesn't do that or doesn't want to do that, will they send us a letter saying it's okay for council to contact the city of Cincinnati to put together a proposal for us to consider about Cincinnati becoming Norwood's water purveyor.
Okay.
And I think that's fine to do it in the alternative in a single section.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. The section 2, the same resolution, has the phrase of confidence, and I'm not familiar with this language. Mr. Moore, can you maybe explain what that first sentence, what that phrase is? I didn't know if that was a typo or if I just don't know what that means.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam President. I think that's just a typo. It's mistyped. I think the sense is that it should be in order to restore confidence or ensure confidence in the safety of the city's water system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other discussion? Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to, I guess, remind council members that you can vote for the 3 readings and vote against the resolution. I mean, I would imagine that if we don't get all 3 readings today and we have to only do 1 reading, that there would be 2 additional special council meetings that would get scheduled. And I know we've had a lot of special council meetings already. You know, I don't necessarily want more council meetings either. So I would just say that, I mean, I feel like, I will just say I think that it would just be, just want to remind people of that so that we could just move this along.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Any other discussion? Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. With everything I've shared, I recognize the importance of moving this along. So I do plan to vote for this today, with the understanding that we might get back a proposal that's not as meaningful as we would think. I recognize there are many moving parts, and I'm really mindful that for a number of residents, this is a very, not just frustrating, but unnerving reality to be in. And so I do want to make it clear that I am supportive of the process of reaching a resolve. I do think there's some glitches along the way, and I think they're resolvable, though.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Mr. Thompson?
I'd just like to say that the This is all about seeking information. I've been critical of this administration, especially in regards to this, for telling us nothing. We're left to our own devices to find out what's going on, what contracts have been signed, how much money has been sent, what deals have been made, and we wait and we do public records requests and we do the best that we can. This whole process is just about seeking more information so that we can make better decisions. All we're trying to do with this ordinance and the next one is just get more information so that when the time comes, we'll be able to make better decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any other discussion? Motion on the floor is to suspend the rules. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
No.
Mr. Breeden?
Yes.
By a vote of 6 to 1, the motion carries. Please have all 3 readings.
Resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for management of the City of Norwood's water system for 6 months. Resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for management of the City of Norwood's water system for 6 months. Resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for management of the City of Norwood's water system for 6 months.
Mr. Bonsall,
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the resolution be passed.
seconded by Mr. Clark. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
No.
Mr. Breeden?
Yes.
By a vote of 6 to 1, the motion carries. Next is a resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for long-term management of the City of Norwood's water system. Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move that we have all 3 readings of the resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Clark. Is there any discussion? Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess for the same reasons for the previous one, this is just starting the process to seek information. There won't be any action, I guess, on the Greater Cincinnati Waterworks side without us speaking as a body, and we speak through a body through our resolutions. So I would, and that's why we're here today, but it's just trying to seek information about what it could look like. There's many other municipalities that have their water system managed by Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, the city of Mason being one notable one. And I think nobody can argue that the city of Mason has lost its identity. So anyways, this is, again, just to seek information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Is there any other discussion? Mrs. Hanrahan.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to add to that, this is only for information. And we need to be thinking about long-term. We need to be thinking about when the EPA reports come in. It's already been said in the reports in 2014 we need to replace the tanks, or they suggest we replace the tanks. And I think before any decisions are made, we're going to need a cost comparison of everything. We're going to have to figure out what's going to be best and cheaper for our residents. So, this isn't, a cost from Cincinnati, and are we going to go with them, yes or no? There's a whole lot of research that needs to be done here and data collected, and this is just a starting point so that we can have all the information together when it's time to do something. Thank you.
Mrs. Hanrahan. Is there any other discussion? Motion on the floor is to suspend the rules. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes.
Mr. Breeden?
Yes.
Vote of 7 to 0, the motion carries. Please have all 3 readings.
Resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for long-term management of the City of Norwood's water system. Resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for long-term management of the City of Norwood's water system. Resolution requesting a proposal from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks for long-term management of the City of Norwood's water system.
Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the resolution be passed.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes.
Mr. Breeden?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We have no administration reports. We do have other request to address council, and that is Dan Galligan. If you want to come forward, sir, give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council. Thank you for your patience.
My name is Dan Galligan, 4773 Poplar Street. I'm excited to announce a mayoral debate and meet and greet of the candidates. It's going to be September 5th, starting at 6 p.m. with the 6 p.m. With the meet and greet of. I've had a majority of the candidates running for election respond back, so the majority of them are going to be there. Then at 7 p.m., the debate's going to happen with the 3 mayoral candidates. It's going to be at the high school, mini auditorium. Also encourage the citizens to reach out to Brandon Atwood if you have any questions that you wish to be asked at the debate. He can be reached at brandonatwood66@gmail.com. Hopefully we can get some real good questions and bring some good information to the citizens. That's all I have.
Great. Do you have any questions?
What was it?
Mr.
You could
Sanker?
repeat the date again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's September 5th.
September 5th at 6 p.m. at Norwood High School Mini Auditorium.
That's correct.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Bonsall?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. So I think this should be a fun time. I want to appreciate you for really getting the spearheaded and jump-started. Also want to just express gratitude to all the candidates that are participating in the meet and greet beforehand. I think the opportunity for more opportunities there are for Norwood residents to meet us, when I say us, but the candidates. I think it's going to be better. I will say about reaching out to Brandon Atwood, I highly recommend that. There was one question that I had that I just assumed would have already been on the list, and he specifically told me that he was not adding any questions of his own. So he's only picking from a list of questions that are submitted. So, I submitted my question. I bet people could guess the topic, and that hopefully will make it. Who knows? But I just want to very much encourage people to do that, and I want to thank you, Mr. Galligan, for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mr. Breeden?
Oh, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Gallagher, thank you for putting this on for us, and it's going to be a nice event. I also spoke to Mr. Atwood. He said he would take questions through Messenger also. So you gave his email address, and so if you want to message him on Facebook, he would also take questions through Messenger also. I just wanted to say that. I heard him say that, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Just for matter of information, the Chamber of Commerce at their luncheon on September the 18th have invited the mayoral candidates to answer questions as well. So if anyone is a chamber member, that may be a second opportunity. So, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thanks for the information. We'll move on to unfinished business. Any unfinished business? Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. It has been a long time since we began discussing some amendments to the rules of council, and I'd like to see if we can't get a second to go ahead and approve those. They've been sent out several times, I think, now, and we've just never acted on that. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the changes.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't have the changes right in front of me here. I would prefer if we just add it to our agenda on the next council meeting, and then we can consider it there. I don't remember anything specifically on them that there was any objections on, but again, since I don't have that right in front of me, I'd rather review them one more time since it's been a month or two since we have.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mrs. Hanahan?
Thank you, Madam President. I've been agreeing with Mr. Bonsall a lot lately, and I agree with him. I think we should just go ahead and put it on the agenda, request that it be put on the agenda for the next meeting, so we do have time to review it before we vote on it.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanahan. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate those comments. This will be the second time we will have put it on the agenda since we've reported out about it. So I just want to ask that folks remain mindful to review them so that at our next regular meeting, when they're on the agenda, we can take action. Thank you. I also would like to make the comment, I'd be willing to table my motion if Mr. Thompson's also okay with that.
You're willing to do that? Thank you.
Thank you.
So can we just make a note to make sure that they are on the agenda, even if we have to put them under unfinished business, just listed as an item under unfinished business?
Thank you.
We'll make that as number 1. Thank you. Any other unfinished business? Mr. Sanker.
Madam President, question through the chair to the law director. Mr. Moore, do you have any update as far as over at the status of the Quality Inn? It just walking by there over the weekend, it seems to be in a little more disrepair now than it was over the last few months. I knew there was some activity, but I'm not sure where we are, if you have any update on that or where we're at.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam President. The last I heard, there were new owners. That's really all I know.
That really is unfinished business. It's like a long-term unfinished business.
I will say their second civil rights lawsuit is still pending in the Court of Appeals. So, yes, unfinished business.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. It's been a few months now. We had intended to schedule a committee of the whole to discuss the Recreation Department, and just wanted to check in and see is that something that this body still wants to convene and discuss?
If it is, thank you, Ms. Stevenson. At the time we had originally set a tentative date, there were swimming championships, and then recreation was still, the swimming pool was still open with all the problems that seemed to go on all summer long. So that is over now. So, and then Ms. Wallace was on vacation. So, you know, if council's, I'm assuming you are still interested in having that done, I will contact her to see if we can set up a date for that committee of the whole meeting. I will for sure get back to you. I will check with her, and I'll send out an email through the clerk of council's office when she's available and when we could get that scheduled. Mrs. Hanrahan.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Can we go ahead and set a date and see if she's available then?
If you want to do that, we can do that. What are you thinking?
Potentially, what about before the next council meeting on September 10th? Like,
oh, you before the council meeting that same evening?
Yeah, not
Okay.
too parts. Yeah.
That would work.
6:30, 7? What time do you want to make it?
Why don't you go 6:45?
Yeah.
Okay.
Works.
So 6:45 on Tuesday, September the 10th. I will contact Ms. Wallace-Parton and see if she can be here for that, as well as Mr. Stiff. I think he had information. So I will do that. And again, through the clerk's office, let you know whether she's available or not, if that's okay with you. Thank you, Joe. Any other unfinished business? Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. This is something that we passed earlier in the year, but just to remind us all, the next citywide street sale is September 6th and 7th, that weekend. I have confirmed with Tim Maloney, the city treasurer, that the permits are available. The fee is waived, but we encourage everybody to please, everybody is supposed to get a permit for it. One of the benefits of getting that permit is that you're on the list that it gets put on the city website and distributed, so that people that are driving around know to go to your street, to go to your citywide, your street sale. So, yeah, if there's any questions about that, just reaching out to the city treasurer's office, they should be able to help.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Any other unfinished business? Any new business? Mr. Thompson?
Thanks. Mrs. Lake, a couple weekends ago, a few of us had the opportunity to go to a charrette, sponsored by Dana Bowl with Keep Norwood Cool, about how Norwood could potentially connect with Wasson Way. Mrs. Hanrahan, Mrs. Lake, and myself were there, along with, I don't know, probably a couple dozen other people. And it was a great event. There was a lot of, it was basically like a big brainstorm. A lot of really good ideas about public spaces, specifically in the direction of Ward 2 and where Wasson Way borders up against Norwood. Ms. Bowl, she organized the whole thing and did a lot of pre-work, so everybody who came with homework that they had done and ideas that they had put together, and then we all shared our ideas. It was a great event. It was fun to be in a room full of so many creative people talking about ways to improve our city. So I just wanted to thank her publicly for putting that together, and thank everybody who attended for coming and making it a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I will reiterate that I know Chris Brown was there from Planning Commission, Greg Warres, the city's planner, and others from the community, so it was a good sharing session. I agree. Mrs. Hanrahan.
I'd also like to comment. Dana Bull did just an outstanding job organizing the charrette and creating boards for everyone's ideas and designs. Dana is outstanding at developing and moderating, and it's definitely her strong suit. And it's impressive that this event cost the city nothing. Well, it offered new solutions through the people who live here. So I want to thank her also.
And you two can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. I think her ultimate purpose was to gather all this information and share that with the city of Norwood, so that a plan could be developed. As Mr. Brown suggested, wintertime is a great time to think about the nicer things of the spring and planting and things like that. So her information is, or her purpose is purely unselfish, to share with the city and try to make the Norwood area surrounding the Wasson Way project a little more inviting and a fun place to be. So thank her. And thank you for bringing it up, both of you. Any other new business? No? All right. We have one communication, and that's a letter from Tim Maloney regarding bank reconciliation.
Dear council members, attached, please find the bank reconciliation for July 2019. Sincerely, Tim Maloney, Treasurer.
Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the letter be received and filed.
Seconded by Mr. Braden. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We have no absent members. Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we adjourn.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned.